What is the thing that is of prime importance that the distractions of the world are going to take you away from, are going to offer their allure to lead you to distraction so that you are not focused on the thing? Genuine power transforms and authority tends to disrupt, right? People get inspired when they're around something that's powerful. This is when I get harshly real, I guess you'd say, is that meaning disappears when we stop realizing the impact that we are having.
Meet Randy. It's 2:17 a.m. and he is wide awake. He's staring at the ceiling while the rest of his house is sound asleep. Notifications keep dinging on his cell phone sitting on the nightstand. An email from one of his leaders in Europe. Slack messages coming in from his team in Toronto. And a calendar invite that reads, Urgent, AI Roadmap Alignment. Randy is the VP of a financial services firm, and on paper, he's doing very well. He's married, he has 2 kids in high school, seems to have built a steady career, but lately it feels anything but stable. The last 12 months have been relentless. New executive leadership, a massive systems overhaul, AI tools that are coming in faster than anyone can absorb, regulatory pressure that changes every quarter, and strategies that keep shifting midstream. And his team is being asked to do more, to do it faster, but to also stay calm all at once. His team is stretched across the US, Europe, and Canada. And they have meetings throughout the day, but there isn't much collaboration. People show up guarded. Their videos are off, and the silos have hardened. And there's a underlying question that everyone is afraid to ask. Does any of this even matter? Projects get paused. Priorities keep changing. They spend months on a new initiative that gets thrown away by one executive decision, and it's weighing on his team. Motivation is fading. Energy is draining. It feels like everybody's running on this treadmill that's going to be shut off at any second. And this is what keeps Randy up at night. He worries. He worries that his team is going to be burnt out, that his leaders are going to leave, not because of pay, not because of performance, but because it feels like their work doesn't matter, that there's no meaning in it. Randy doesn't need new tools on how to be productive. What he needs is to figure out how to keep his team connected, how to make them believe in the work that they're doing in an environment that seems to want to tear them apart. Today, I'm speaking with Greg Bennick, keynote speaker, author, and global voice on how to help teams to stay focused, to work together, and to recognize the meaning and the impact of their work. Greg has spent decades helping groups to stay focused in a world of distraction, to be able to work together collaboratively, and to be able to stay connected to purpose, even in environments where there are so many unknowns, with so much uncertainty. And I'm excited to hear how Greg would help someone like Randy, who is very competent as a leader and is just struggling to get his team to believe in the work that they're doing. My name is Jay Bassi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Greg, I was reading about you when you were 12 years old. You had an experience with juggling. And I said, I got to ask him about this. It was a metaphor for you as you reflected later on. Can you tell us that story and what it means to you?
Well, I'm pretty sure you're talking about how I came upon juggling in my life, because it was a busy year age 12. But what basically happened is I had one goal in life. I wanted to be the greatest coin collector who had ever lived. And I was really fascinated by coins. My dad was a coin collector, and I was really fascinated by them. And when I was 12, yeah, just before my 13th birthday, my school had mini courses after school. You could sign up for learn to play baseball, learn to knit, learn to draw, whatever it might be. I pitched the school and said, I want there to be a coin collecting mini course. And the school said that if I found somebody to teach that class, they would create this course. So I went through the work of finding the guy at a coin shop nearby in the small town of Connecticut where I grew up, convincing him to teach this class, convincing the school to have the class, and then I signed up for the class. Well, the school secretary accidentally did not sign me up for coin collecting and signed me up for juggling by mistake, a class in juggling. I was crestfallen, heartbroken, all those types of words. I walked into the juggling class on the first day, completely disappointed because I wanted the coin collecting class that I had set up. And as I walked into the class, there was a young boy 10 feet away from me. He was juggling 3 baseballs. And the second I took my dejected head and lifted it up and looked at him juggling these baseballs, I saw him and I said to myself, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I did my first professional show as a professional juggler 3 months later, at the age of 13 years old, and I was doing corporate and shows of all different kinds immediately. By the time I was 15, I was doing corporate events, and I never had another job. I never had a job when all my friends were working as cashiers in grocery stores and gas stations. I was literally juggling, doing corporate events and doing all sorts of events. And while I did get to poke my head into the coin collecting class, and I'm still fascinated by coins to this day, I was able to use juggling to get on stages and do keynotes. And my coin collecting keynote is probably not of interest to most people, but the juggling one, the juggling. Let me tell you, juggling, magic, mind reading, people love that sort of thing. So yeah, that all started by mistake as a result of a happy accident.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so now juggling, right? What are some lessons that you pulled from having to learn how to be a professional juggler and then being able to perform it for others in some of the things you do now?
If you asked only that question, we could talk for an hour. I could just stand here and give advice and thoughts. So at some point, just please say shut up and I'll be quiet. So here's a couple ideas. Here's a couple thoughts. So I open all my keynotes by telling people consistency, consistency, consistency. It's true in working out. It's true in maintaining your relationship. It's true in how you interface with your team. And it's true with juggling. When I'm on stage juggling, I don't just walk out on stage, do tricks, and then walk out off stage and expect applause. Every trick is a metaphor for a life lesson. So I tell them consistency, consistency, and I use as an example the fact that I had to put in thousands of hours, consistent hours, when I was practicing learning juggling tricks in order to get them right. Well, the same is true for anything we're trying to do in business and in life. We need consistency. So that was lesson number 1. I would say lesson number 2 is that juggling is an incredible vehicle for connection with the audience, because everyone faces conflicts with gravity all day, every day. And I certainly recognize as a juggler how important that conflict is, right? So when I'm juggling in front of an audience, people are looking at me, recognizing a similar, something familiar, even if they can't juggle themselves, because we all deal with weight and we all deal with the moon, the tides, whatever it might be. We see around us evidence of gravity all the time. People look at juggling and they see another evidence of gravity. It's a point of connection with people on a really deep level. And I didn't realize that until much later in my career, but it's absolutely true. It's why people watch juggling. They feel somehow connected to it on this physical level, like physical as in the universe level. It sounds esoteric, but it's true. I mean, people don't watch it because it's an interesting trick. They watch it because they realize it's a metaphor for something. So it's a means of connecting with an audience. So between consistency and connecting with audiences, my gosh, like I said, I could talk all day long. It's not just I've got 5 juggling balls in the air, but rather I'm doing something which represents being consistent, being focused, being driven, being determined, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what I gather from that, I'm just imagining when I see someone do such a great feat, what I feel is a sense of, like you were, not just like wonder in the actual experience, but a connection to doing something very difficult, very challenging. And that, for me, creates a feeling of inspiration to say, I feel that fulfillment when I do something that challenging. I'm seeing someone else do it. And that, for me, is where I get a connection.
There you go. And that's the nature of art, and the nature of performance, and the nature of presentation, is that in an ideal sense, it's going to give the audience member a new perspective on something in their life that they will see or do differently as a result. We're recording just on the end point of Alex Honnold climbing this building in Taiwan. Was it Taiwan, or I'm not sure exactly where the building was, but regardless,
yeah, I'm not sure.
He climbed a building. We all know. Even as I said it, you nodded. Every
Of course.
human on the planet watched it, right? So am I going to go out and climb a building? Absolutely not. I'm not even going to climb the bookshelves that are on the other side of the room. Not going to do it. Not without ropes. Not going to do it. The point is that as I watched him, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, how could somebody do something so amazing? And it inspired me to do a mailing to clients. It inspired me to call a couple, potential clients who I wasn't going to call. I was just going to email. I don't want any more emails. I want to get a phone call from a human being. It inspired connection. So all of a sudden, Greg Bennick on the other side of the planet is talking to somebody who he wouldn't have talked to otherwise. Why? Because Alex Honnold climbed a building and inspired a sense of wonder, awe, excitement, inspiration in me. And I translated that into a phone call to somebody. That's the nature of art. I write about it in my book. It really is that if this conversation inspires somebody to sharpen a pencil better, fantastic. If it inspires somebody to work with a team or a client better, even better. And if it inspires somebody to lead a better life, fantastic. Even though we're not telling every single individual viewer, go do this, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this. We're just having a conversation, and hopefully this art, this moment, inspires that in others. Same with Alex Honnold, same with juggling on stage. If people watch the juggling on stage and they go, oh my gosh, that was amazing, and they run a better meeting better, great, I'll take it. That's fantastic. So yeah, inspiring people is important, but I think it's important not to beat people over the head with it. To be inspired, I'm not that guy, right? That motivational guy. It's more like, here's some things, and here's some lessons we might take from it, and then see where people go.
Well, one of the lessons that I know you speak about a lot, Greg, and it's evident in the ability to juggle the way you do, is focus. I mean, you can't be able to juggle effectively without having a real healthy sense of concentration. And you speak on how distraction is such a problem in our world today. So talk to me about how there's that metaphor there of juggling with focus and not letting distraction take over, and how that applies to just the average person in their day-to-day work and their lives.
Absolutely. So there's a chapter in my book, Keep Your Eyes on the Knife to Resist the Allure of Distraction. Distraction is alluring. It is sometimes intentional, and many times intentionally so, meaning people are paying a lot of money to keep your eyeballs on their product and their video and what they're presenting to the world. And that allure is there. We don't want to miss out. We're going to keep doom scrolling no matter what. Like you can have my phone when you pry it from my cold dead fingers, right? You could just imagine that we don't want to give up our phone no matter what. We just want to keep scrolling, keep scrolling. And I think that in a world with that many distractions, it's essential to keep our sense of self and keep grounded. And I know for me, the keep your eyes on the knife, which I'll explain as a metaphor, is really important. When I was 12, and this is another thing that happened when I was 12.
What happened when you were 12?
Yeah, this is more 13 because I was in performance, but I was performing in my small town in Connecticut. So yeah, 12, 13, I'm telling you, it was a busy year. I was juggling in front of an audience, and I was doing a show, and I was doing a routine with a knife. And at the time, I was using one of my mother's kitchen knives to entertain and impress my audience as I was juggling. And I had a carrot in my hand, and I decided to slice through the carrot with the knife to show the audience these knives are sharp. Now, a little behind the scenes in the juggling world, if you were to take a carrot and hit it with the backside of a knife, it would break. And that's enough to convince an audience the knives are sharp. But these knives were sharp. And as I sliced through the carrot, rather than doing it once, I held the carrot, sliced through with the knife. These knives are sharp, was my line. I was going to just say that once and slice through the carrot. Instead, I got excited. And on every word of that sentence, these knives are sharp, I kept slicing through the carrot. Well, a carrot gets shorter and shorter, closer to my hand. And on the sharp word, I slice through my finger rather than the carrot. So I'm in front of a live audience, and now I'm bleeding. And I say that smiling because, I've got maybe a tiny scar to show for it many years later, but I was fine. But here I am bleeding in front of the audience at 13 years old. And I learned something that day that I didn't codify into words until later in life, which is keep your eyes on the knife. And that means that in the midst of the audience, the distractions, the things which would take your attention, the excitement of the performance, keep your eyes on the thing that's most important to you, that if it falls or fails, will do the most significant damage. I took my eyes off of the knife, the one thing in the entire town I need to keep my focus on, and I did not. So keep your eyes on the knife is it's a juggling metaphor. It ultimately, at the end of the day, for listeners, I mean, what is the thing that is of prime importance that the distractions of the world are going to take you away from, are going to offer their allure to lead you to distraction so that you are not focused on the thing, and that'll lead to a cut finger. And again, that's a metaphor, but we want to avoid those situations where we have a problem happen because we lost our focus. We have something go wrong because we are distracted. And the distractions are everywhere. We all know that. I mean, I'm not Greg splaining anything that's shockingly new when I say the world is full of distractions. It has been for decades, forever. There's been distractions. What we do with them in the moment is what matters, and we need to keep our eyes on the knife.
Well, I like this metaphor because so often, Greg, what you hear people say is you need to ward off the distractions, guard against the distractions. And I do think there's some value to that. Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing you say is be more proactive on focusing on the thing that matters most to you. And if you just stay there, then the distractions won't really impede. Maybe I'll give you an example and let me know your thoughts on this. Like, one thing I share with people is to go through a practice where you prime your mind every day and you really either visualize or write out or reflect on the thing that's most important to you as a way to start your day. Be able to kind of imprint it into your subconscious that this is what's most important to you. And if you start your day with that, then the distractions have less of an effect on you because you've already set that intention.
I like that.
Through the day.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that sounds like a good idea. I mean, how is your morning different if you wake up and doom scroll versus if you wake up and exercise? I think that you're right, that if we set our intention powerfully and positively, now I'm putting on my motivational hat, but really, if we intentionally set our day off right by not allowing the, I guess you'd say, the spectacle around us, to coin somebody else's term, or to use somebody else's term, we're going to be in better shape. And when I say spectacle, I'll tell you what I mean. There was a group of writers in France in the 1960s, late 60s, called the Situationist Internationale. And one of them was a guy named Guy Debord. He wrote an intentionally confusing book called The Society of the Spectacle. He wanted to write in a really convoluted way to confuse his readers. It was just kind of a thing of the times. But he had a clear message. The world around us is spectacle. And we have lost ourselves amidst spectacle. And the spectacle is the images we see of people's experiences and things for sale, and we forget ourselves amidst that. And in fact, we live vicariously through the spectacle. And here's what I mean. I don't need to fall in love because Taylor Swift is falling in love. And I see that happen and I feel satiated by her experience. I don't need to have adventures. Alex Honnold is having adventures. I don't need to have adventures of my own. We end up living life at arm's length from actual life because we are living by way of the spectacle. And his warning to us was, don't let the spectacle take away the vibrancy of your own life, essentially, and your own value and what you can contribute. So that said, he's writing in 1968. What's he talking about? Billboards, magazines, books, right? What would he say about TikTok and Instagram and social media and media delivered to every single glowing rectangle within arm's reach 24 hours a day? We have to be intentional because those distractions are always going to be there. There's someone somewhere in the world who is very frustrated that you and I haven't looked at their ads in the last 15 minutes. The distractions are always going to be there. We have to be intentional amidst them in order to get done the things we want to get done and do the things that we want to do. It's up to us. It's up to us.
And Greg, are there some things that you put into place for yourself, or is it like, you just don't even have the compulsion to reach for those things. I'm curious as to what it's like for you to be able to stay focused on the knife, the way you were saying.
No, you're very kind. And I could sit here and feed you a line and say, yeah, I have no compulsion. I mean, the people who have no compulsion to pursue such things are named like Buddha. And you see what I'm getting at? These are enlightened humans. That's not me. Oftentimes I find myself, picking up my phone and scrolling, and, I'll start with some whatever news piece. And then all of a sudden I'm reading about otters and how they, hold hands or whatever, honestly, whatever crazy thing is coming up on social media and videos and whatnot and reels. The point is that a couple things. One is I found the times of day when I work best and the times of day that I work worst, I guess you'd say. Mm-hmm. And the worst times are the times, certainly where I'll be more inclined to just not be focused. And I know that. And those are the times where I need to do something different. That's when I'm going to go to the gym, right? I'm not going to get anything done in that hour or 2 or 3 anyway. Similarly, in the times that I know that I am focused or I'm going to work really well, putting down my phone helps. I mean, putting down my phone helps. It just kickstarts things, right? I'm not going to get in a car accident as readily if I'm not in my car, right? If I'm at home.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing, right? If I put my phone down, it seems so simple and easy to say, but if I put my phone down and I focus on something different, all of a sudden, it's amazing how many books you can read when you're not holding your phone in your hand. It's amazing how many actual conversations and connections you can have with people when you're not holding your phone in your hand. And that's not to demonize social media or the media delivered by phone. You and I are connected today because of a digital connection, right? At the end of the day, with other people or by way of other people. But the point is, I think that we need to be intentional because no one is going to be impervious to the influence of advertising and media and social media and the spectacle overall.
Yeah. And what you said earlier really resonated with me in regards to experience. I want to live the experience. I don't want to experience it vicariously through somebody else when I see the post on Instagram. And that, I guess that has to matter to you, for anyone listening, that has to be really important to you. And that, therefore, it creates the intention day in and day out. And what I would love to learn from you too, Greg, is I know you work with teams and organizations, and oftentimes a leader has to help their people to be able to stay focused on what's important in the world of a distraction. So we went through a little bit of how one does it for themselves, but how does a leader help others to stay focused and avoid the distractions in the workplace?
Well, I think one thing that's important to remember is for people to lead from a standpoint of power, not authority. I read about it in my book. The difference between power and authority is profound. We could talk about it for an hour. Maybe we should just do a series of 8 podcast interviews where I talk about, what's juggling mean? What's power and authority mean? But, genuine power transforms and authority tends to disrupt, right? People get inspired when they're around something that's powerful. Alex Honnold climbing that building is powerful. He's not climbing that building and forcing me to and telling me to do anything. He's just simply demonstrating the power within, and I'm connecting to that. And with that in mind, I think that a leader inspires people to find within that which is powerful within themselves. That doesn't mean that a leader inspires anarchy amongst their people, right? Where they're all individually inspired, because ultimately at the end of the day, if we're working for an organization or if we're working as part of a team even, we are deciding to be part of that collective, that group, whatever, however you might define it. So we're not just all going our own direction, whatever it might be. We're working together towards a common goal. So let's say an organization of some kind. I think a leader empowers people to find meaning and reminds them that the work that they do is meaningful. It's essential because if people don't feel as though the work they do is meaningful and that they're not amounting to anything, they're going to feel like cogs in a proverbial machine. They're just going to feel like they're insignificant and replaceable. And no one wants that. And every leader recognizes the importance of pulling people in a direction other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I've had the experience of this, by the way, what you just shared, Greg. And I know it's in Randy's story too, of feeling like the work you're doing, it feels like it's meaningless. Mm-hmm. And Randy in the story, I personally relate to, because I've also been in that position of leadership where what's coming from above makes it feel that way. And I'm the one in the middle, to be able to then try and translate this to the team members that are looking to me as a leader. So that's where Randy is right now, right? There's so many changes happening from above, organizational changes, hierarchical changes. So what would be the way in which someone like Randy could keep his people really feeling inspired, feel like their work is meaningful, even when there's so much chaos above him?
Well, I think one thing, let's just talk about one thing at a time. It's important to remember the impact that you are having. And that's a mindset shift. And again, I'm not trying to sound like a motivational speaker here, but rather a realist. This is when I get harshly real, I guess you'd say, is that meaning disappears when we stop realizing the impact that we are having. I could sit here and think, okay, we're having a podcast episode, we're having a conversation. Are we the only ones who are ever going to listen to this? Or I could say, there's thousands of listeners, let's have a great conversation, and maybe some of those folks to get in touch with either one of us and continue this conversation. That sounds a lot more inspiring to me. So when we forget the potential of impact that we are having, all of a sudden meaning starts to disappear. And I think that inspiring people, like, for example, Randy, needs to come from a place of practice. And again, I mentioned earlier, consistency, having people remember the meaning that they are bringing to people, or the impact that they are bringing to people, even in the midst of whatever else is happening. There has to be a core foundation. We cannot exist in a situation where we don't have our feet firmly planted on the ground. And if the powers that be are whisking us all over the place, it's essential to remember meaning and purpose, and then establish consistency, consistency, consistency. Asking a team, what did we work on this week? Why was it important? What role did you play in that? What would you have done differently? What would the results have been had we not done this thing? And look for real answers there from people, because people are going to be inspired. They're going to be inspired when they're able to share what they did and why they perceived it as meaningful. They're going to see connections with other people. They're going to feel it within themselves, and they're going to feel from the strength of the team. They're going to feel it growing, the team growing stronger. But it has to start with a grounded sense amidst the distraction, even if that's a moment, a minute, an hour in the midst of a chaotic week. It has to start from that strong foundation. Because, the goal is getting grounded ultimately. My book, is about building a better now. And this isn't a pitch for the book, but rather a statement about the fact that in the midst of a world of distractions, we have to find ways to bring ourselves back to center. If the environment is noisy and volatile, naming that situation even can be a start. People will find connection amidst that. Like, oh my gosh, I felt that too. I felt that being pulled in so many different directions. Okay, great. What do we do this week that had an impact? Remember the impact you're making. Start from there, and I think it'll be a much better, productive conversation.
And the approach that you're recommending here, Greg, I want to pull out and talk a little bit about, is to invite the other person to appropriate the meaning. Meaning, you didn't say, here's the impact that you're having. You
That's right.
asked, what is the impact that we are having or you are having? So from what I gathered, you're saying, don't necessarily try to project it onto them and tell them what it is. Instead, ask them to infuse the meaning into their work by presenting them with the right questions.
That's right. That sounds like something that sounds like an adequate and excellent use of power, for lack of a better word, is being a powerful catalyst for transformation rather than an authoritative or authoritarian taking an authoritarian approach, which says, you will do this, you have felt this, you are feeling this is what you're doing. That's kind of the old school kind of motivational style, right? What's up, audiences? I want to tell you what you're doing this. But rather, I'd much rather inspire people and have them generative with their inspiration from within. That sounds like a team I want to be a part of, where people are genuinely emotionally bought in to the importance of what they're doing and why it matters. That sounds like a great team to be a part of.
Now, what I'm curious too to learn from you in regards to team dynamics, and this is in Randy's story, is that he has teams that are very distant geographically. They are doing their best to stay connected and collaborative, even though there are, some in Europe, some in Canada, some in US. How do you keep a team connected when you don't have as much of the physical, I'm in person with you? Because it can be so easy to fall into silos, Greg.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Yeah, I can tell you right now that people solidify silos because they are protecting themselves. They just feel like they want similar around them. They want similar around them. They don't want the dissimilar. The risk that comes from expanding beyond the silo doesn't seem appealing to them. They're protecting themselves, and oftentimes when people get burned out, that's when we see silos solidify. So, naming that is a good place to start. If I had people in Alabama, Mississippi, Paris, and Japan, I would be asking each of them somehow, some way. And there's lots of ways to ask people questions, right, and get answers. But tell me about tell me about feeling stressed. If you ask anybody that, you're going to get an answer. Tell me about feeling burned out. What's not working for you? Because what we're trying to do is legitimize from them, for them, their perception. I'm feeling burned out. I'm feeling exhausted. I'm feeling stressed. I don't want to share beyond the silo. I don't want to work in conjunction with other people in different locations. Why? Tell me why. Giving people a chance to share legitimizes it gives them a sense of meaning through being heard, and that's a way to bring teams together as well. And you're also going to learn as a leader what stresses people are facing that you might not realize. And I'll use as an example. I did a presentation, a keynote presentation for a major real estate company a few years ago, right before the pandemic, and they were talking about having a banner year, like a tremendous year. And I asked to speak to some of their agents and some of the folks who work for the company so that I could just get a sense of how successful everyone was doing and, how much fun it must be to sit on a pile of money the size of a house. And they were basically not saying that when I talked to the agents. I started talking to agents. I said, tell me about your year. And people were like, yeah, it was a successful year, and I'm kind of looking for a new job because I can't stand the stress. People were saying that again and again and again, not the job, but this was the most stressful year of my life. This was the year that I almost broke. I kept hearing that. And I went back to the leadership team and I said, do you realize in the midst of your banner year that what the people on your team are saying is that it took too much out of them? And they were like, what? We had no idea. So then when I got on stage, I was able to make allusions to that. I was able to speak to that idea that this was a hugely successful year and a challenging one. And you saw people in the audience nodding their heads because they had been heard. It legitimizes the burnout. It legitimizes their stress. And it gives them a chance to share and be heard and feel as though even their feelings are meaningful. I think that's very important. So those are ways that I would work to bring people together. Ask some questions and be sure to listen to the answers.
Yeah, so I'm thinking too about how so many leaders think, okay, I want to have an offsite or a workshop, right, to bring everyone together. And so often what they'll do is they'll go with some of those trust fall type exercises, or like build something together, And while I mean, that's fun, it doesn't really, for me, I've never felt that it created a long-lasting sense of connection. It was just more of these kind of fun activities. So what you just shared, right, is like, no, you would encourage them to go deeper into some of the emotional stuff. Like, I guess, what would you do, right? You have this group here. They feel siloed. You're kind of there to facilitate. What would be some of the either, I don't know, exercises or ways you would provoke them to start connect? Yeah.
I'll give you an exact example with a client who I had a Zoom with yesterday for an event that I'm doing in 2 weeks in the South. I asked them tell me about your event and what you're looking for. And obviously they have booked me as a keynote speaker already. They say, we need a workshop we need to have a workshop, a breakout session. Well, everyone has keynotes and breakout sessions, but to what end, right? And the idea is to bring people together regardless of where they are in the company, in the organization. And what I offered to do was teach everyone how to juggle. And they laughed when I said that. And I said, okay, this is not a circus skills exercise. At the end, we don't all pick our clown name and go off and do birthday parties. I'm going to teach you how to juggle, and I'm going to teach your people how to juggle, because two things are going to happen. One, everyone's going to walk in and say, this is impossible. I can't juggle. And then within 10 minutes, they're going to be throwing a ball or balls back and forth and have an incredible sense of achievement. Okay, that's a great start for lessons right there. Second, they're going to laugh at their coworkers and be laughed at themselves in the spirit of camaraderie, and it's going to be awesome. We're all going to laugh at each other. We're all going to laugh at ourselves, and we're all going to learn from this experience that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for lack of a better word, a safe environment to make mistakes and then grow together, and to have different people from different aspects of the organization be unified through a shared experience. There's a few lessons in there, but the important part is not just that we do the juggling class. It's what you do afterwards. Consistency, consistency, consistency. If you learn how to juggle, hallelujah. 1 out of every 100,000 people is going to shave their head and decades later be a professional mind reading, keynote speaking, juggling. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Everyone else is going to learn a new skill, but then what did you get from it? What did other people get from it? And I always tell people, and I told them yesterday, have your people ask each other, what was that like for you? Hey, remember when we did that juggling thing last week? What'd you get out of that? And have those conversations bring people together beyond just the proverbial trust fall. Because the trust fall is a cool thing to do once, but if I said to you, what did you learn from the trust fall? We'd have a different conversation. If you asked me what I learned from doing a trust fall 20 years ago, I'd be able to tell you, well, I learned that I have a very interesting relationship with being afraid, and I sometimes am intimidated and don't do the thing that I want to do. Great.
Yeah.
Let's have that conversation. So have the exercise, the juggling class, whatever it might be, at the event, at the getaway, the weekend retreat, whatever it might be. But then follow that up. Follow that up with what it meant. And it's not so much even an emotional conversation as it is a practical one. Like, what did that teach me about the way I work? It's like the juggling class leads to a conversation about how you work. In the same way that we talked about watching juggling or watching Alex Honnold leads me to have a conversation with clients. One can lead to the other. We can draw connections if we work actively to have those conversations.
Yeah. And I do think, though, Greg, there is an emotional component, even though it isn't overly emotional, right? You're not like vulnerable, crying your eyes out in this exercise. But as human beings, we are emotional creatures. And so if we can take an exercise, an experience like that, then be asked about it, and then logically we start to put it all together, of course it's going to hit us emotionally as well.
Yep, 100%.
Right.
And we're social creatures too. We need those connections with other people. Yeah.
And I am glad to see that, at least, following everything that happened, obviously with COVID and everything, that we are getting back to where people are coming together and having, because without those in-person connections, it becomes really challenging. And if, some organizations, they want to go the less costly route and keep everything on Zoom. What I've experienced is that while Zoom is a wonderful avenue for being able to communicate information and be able to have some connection, it doesn't replace the in-person opportunities to be able to do such an exercise like you just described.
Yep, because I could stand here and do this. It's not as interesting as watching it live.
Right. It doesn't replace it. Absolutely. And, one of the things that Randy's going through as a leader, he's struggling to even sleep at night because of all of this. And I wanted to just get your take on that, the kind of leader that kind of puts it all on themselves. How would you work through that with someone who's saying, I care that much and it's affecting me outside of the workplace?
Yeah, I think that, people get, let me just say specifically, Randy, likely gets tired because he cares and he's operating in a system that essentially, for lack of a better word, like interrupts his own sense of meaning. I think it's important to remember our own contribution. I would suggest to Randy, if he's having trouble sleeping, that instead of thinking about what he has to do the next day and what's coming up, to at least take a minute, and remember what he has done and what has been inspiring for other people and what he has accomplished. Because there's never going to be a time when we go, I finished everything on my to-do list. I can't believe it. I have nothing to do because I've achieved everything in life that I ever wanted to do. Oh my gosh. I mean, you're laughing, but it's true. I'm laughing because it's like, that's ridiculous. And the example I use, I was in calculus class in high school, senior year of high school, sitting in calculus class. And Chip Plans was my teacher, and Mr. Plans was in front of the class, and he was talking about calculus. And admittedly, I wasn't interested in calculus per se, but what I was interested in was my career as a performer and as a presenter. So I'm taking down notes about calculus, but I really wasn't. I was writing a to-do list for my career and what I needed to do. And I wrote on there, come up with new logo and new promo materials, right? Something almost to that extent. Well, as I would check off things on my to-do list for my career over the days and weeks and months, I would get rid of them off the list. Come up with new logo and new promo materials was on the list until 2 years ago. So that was senior year of high school. I never came up with a logo until 2 years ago. I could fly it in and put it on screen right now, but I now have a logo that I would use all these different logos over the years. And I would always think to myself, I got to come up with a logo. I mean, literally, I never had a specific logo up until a couple years ago. And when my new promo video came out, it was last year, I was like, wow, I've got the logo, I've got the video. And I remembered I could finally check that off the list from senior year of high school. It's ridiculous. The point is, we were never going to get through our to-do list, probably. I mean, I made it sound just now like I have, but there's new things on the list since high school. So Randy, I would suggest, would do very well to think, what have you done? If I based my identity and my sense of self on the logo, I would have been a dismal failure in my own mind through my 20s, 30s, and 40s. Instead, I accomplished a lot of other things while not creating a definitive logo. I accomplished a lot of other things while not making a really awesome promo video. Now that I've got the video and the logo, I can move on to other things, but I would suggest that along the way, what I needed to do was think about the things that I have done. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you're operating in a system which is going to continually interrupt and disrupt your own sense of meaning. So you have to find within that sense of meaning through the things you've done, the people you've impacted, the things you have accomplished. Use that as the beginning of a foundation to then create possibility. And again, not a pitch for my book, but my book is about creating possibility. The whole book is strategies to do so, but they're reminders to myself, ways that I need to create new possibility in a world which throws me off track. And I'm going to suggest that Randy is thrown off track. That's why Randy can't sleep at night, because Randy is operating on somebody else's terms rather than his own. So I think start from there.
The image that came to mind as you were describing that, Greg, is looking ahead at this big mountain that you think you have to climb and forgetting about the mountain you've already climbed and turning your head back and looking at what you've already achieved. That's the first image that came to my mind. And the second one was, there isn't a single time where you're going to climb a mountain and say, I'm done, I'm never going to climb another mountain. No, there's always another mountain after that mountain that you climbed. It never stops. So it's kind of getting out of this illusion that once I get to the top of that mountain, then I'm going to be okay.
I'm done. Then I'm done. I'm
right.
complete.
Right.
I'm complete. I mean, this has been a great conversation, and I'm not going to, after this conversation, go, podcast, check. No, I'm going to go talk to 50 other podcasters over the next 2 years, you know, that kind of thing, right? Because I love conversations, and I would hope that you love climbing mountains, and I hope you love achievement. Remember that the process is essential. You asked early on, what did I learn from juggling? And another thing I learned from juggling is that process matters. We are at our best when we remember that process is not a straight line from beginning to success, but rather it works like a sine wave. I talk about it in my book, you know, sine wave essentially of creativity and achievement. And, you know, there are sometimes we feel as though we're at the top of one of those crests, and other times we feel we're at the bottom of one of those crests. You know, I'm not doing well today. I haven't achieved what I want to achieve. Oh my gosh, we're totally on our way. I've got such clarity. The sine wave is both the highs and the lows. And if we stay on the path, on the sine wave, we're going to get to where we want to go. If we quit when we're at the bottom, then we're done. It's over, right? But we have to stay in this process of, if we want to achieve what we want to achieve, we have to stay in the process of enduring the lows and experiencing the highs with a goal in mind. There's never going to be a time where we just waltz through life easily. Humans aren't built like that, and society isn't built like that. We're going to be pushing through challenges at all times, and we're going to be seeking out new ones as well. I think in a vacuum where we have no challenge, we're going to create one. We're going to find it so that we have something to pursue. So there's never going to be an end point to this. So let's stay in it. Let's create new possibilities as best we can amidst it.
To love the challenge, to love the journey, to not see it as something wrong. I mean, acknowledge, of course, when it's hard. When it's hard, it's hard.
Sure.
That's where you're at. And then to be able to celebrate when you do have your wins without feeling so attached to the outcome being where everything is going to be, the fulfillment and all that. That's not really where it comes from anyway. The fulfillment comes from the climb. So, Greg, let's say Randy was to attend one of your keynotes. He was in the audience, okay?
Yeah.
And he hears you, he's inspired by you, and then you come off the stage and he tells you his story, what he's working through. And you listen, and you have an opportunity here to ask him a question to get him to think a little bit differently, maybe a few questions you want to ask him. What would you ask him and why?
First thing out of my mouth would be, what's meaningful to you? What matters? What truly matters to you? What's meaningful? Because the question does not necessitate an answer towards the end of his business, towards the end of the keynote even. I would be hoping for an answer like, my relationship with my girlfriend. Really? Tell me why. Or my dog. Really? Tell me why. Because that's going to be a great conversation. Those are the conversations that I want to have because they're going to lead to the answers we're looking for without hammering each other over the head with, so tell me about the work you do and the achievements that you've made and the goals that you've set I want to know what's meaningful overall. Wow, yeah, my relationship with my girlfriend is meaningful overall. Why? Well, because I tried again and again. I finally found the right person. Great. What makes her right? Well, I just love the way we communicate. Why is that valuable to you? Well, communication is valuable because it makes me feel heard. It makes me feel seen. It makes me feel recognized. It makes the other person feel that way as well. Awesome. Okay, so tell me, what's the issue you're facing? Yeah, my team is fractured. Let's talk about communication. You mentioned just a few minutes ago that communication was the essential part of the thing that matters most to you. How can we bring communication to your team? How can you bring a greater listening to your team? Right? You see where this is going.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be manipulating the conversation, but rather having a genuine conversation to find what the real substance and foundation is, and then building from there. That's what I would do first, is ask, what's meaningful to you? What matters? And just go from there.
Start within and then create the bridge to what needs to be done. We can, rather than the other way around. So often it's like, oh, you should do this, do that. Like we want to tell them, right? But in this case, the way you're approaching it, it will lead to actual behavior change in Randy because he's really bought in. He's able to connect those dots.
Genuine power transforms and authority disrupts, right? Genuine power. Inspire Randy from within to recognize the connection. Yes.
I love it. Greg, this was such a fantastic... If we want to do that series, 8 episodes, man, I'm down. Let's do it.
Anytime.
I love this chat. And for anyone listening to learn more about Greg and the great work he does, about his keynotes, his book, it's gregbennick.com. I'll spell that out, GregBennick.com. Of course, we'll put that into the show notes. Greg, I am so grateful that you took some time out of your day to chat with me.
It's great. Thank you so much.
This was great. And I want to just tell you how much I appreciate it, and we'll definitely have to do it again.
Thank you, and thanks to all your listeners for joining us on the journey. Appreciate every one of you.
That conversation with Greg stayed with me well beyond that recording. I was talking to my wife about what we discussed, and I'm so excited to share with you 3 of the insights and 3 of the actionable takeaways that I took from this conversation. The first insight: consistency, consistency, consistency. For Greg to become a professional juggler, he put in thousands of hours. He then brought up Alex Honnold, who climbed a skyscraper. I heard of that, by the way, before the recording. Then after I recorded that conversation with Greg, I watched the highlights, and my goodness, what an incredible feat. And seeing what he did inspires us. It inspires us to then commit to that kind of consistency, to be our best selves and to make that kind of impact. So it really does start with consistency. Second insight: keep your eyes on the knife. When he was juggling, if he took his eyes off the knife, he cut himself. He has that example. He tells the story. So what the knife represents for you is what's most important. To stay focused on what's most important. And don't let the spectacle take away from the vibrancy of life. Know what's important to you and stay focused on what's important. Third insight, tap into power, not authority. A leader who's powerful inspires others to be powerful. That kind of leader empowers others because they've connected to meaning, to purpose, and that connection is felt by the people of whom they lead. Someone who's using authority can oftentimes become a cog in the system, to just be a bottleneck. So tap into power. Don't rely on authority. And the first of our 3 actionable takeaways will help you do that. The first one, invite your team to identify meaning. Rather than tell them what their work means, ask them. Ask them what kind of impact that they're making. Let it be something that comes from within. Because what happens is people fall into silos when they're protecting themselves and they're not connected to an aligned vision. So as a leader, that's your responsibility to ensure that they're all connected to something bigger. Second actionable takeaway, know your focus times. He talked about how he knows that times where he's not normally focused, he wants to schedule something else like exercise or an activity where it isn't as, let's say, requiring so much of his attention. Whereas his focus times, he wants to remove the distractions. The environment is one where he can really focus in on what he needs to do, the things that are most important. So knowing your focus times and then scheduling them will help you to ensure that you are planning well for a productive day. And then the third actionable takeaway is to remember your contribution. So often we're just thinking about all the things we have to do, all the things that are wrong, all the goals we haven't achieved. And we need to remind ourselves of the progress we've already made. To be able to stand at that point, look back and see the mountains we've already climbed. And so often a leader like Randy in the story is struggling because they're just thinking about all the things that are not fixed yet. And what Randy and any leader needs to be reminded of is the impact that they've already made. Join us on Friday's episode. I am going to dive into 3 words that can change everything for you. 3 words that will allow for you to stay connected to purpose, to be able to push through when times get hard, to be able to inspire you, which then eventually inspires others. And it is on Friday the 13th, I believe. We have 2 Friday the 13th back to back in February and in March, which is just interesting. But it'll be on Friday the 13th. We'll go over those 3 words. Don't miss that episode on Friday. And until then, until next time, thank you so much for listening.